I am fairly direct, and that's one of the things that I think leaders respect about me. I don't dance, and I'm not very afraid of them. He was a CEO who sat in the top floor of the building. He rarely went down to the canteen. He rarely engaged with people. So they didn't really see him. We have to work together to find something that fits on a natural basis, that allows people to come across the way they need to again inspire, drive passion, create an environment of effectiveness.
It sounds like you emphasize this. The leader is never working on their own. Even if they're a solopreneur, they're working with other people. Whether you want more innovation more easily, you are feeling burnt out or overwhelmed, or you simply know that something isn't quite the way you know it can be, you are not alone. I hear the same from leaders every day. On Uncommon Leadership, we explore aligning personal fulfillment with business success, creating authentic teams, and cultivating the resilience, adaptability, and ease necessary to move beyond simply surviving today's challenges into thriving. I'm Michael Hunter with Uncommon Teams, and today we'll uncover fresh insights into what it means to lead. Joining me is Rita Malvone. Rita, a business performance consultant toggling between Shanghai and New York City, has spent the past 10 years helping companies and individuals get out of their own way. Her approach, dubbed the Chiropractic Leadership method, is one of the many topics we will surely cover today. Welcome, Rita.
Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
I've been looking forward to this conversation all day. When, Rita, did you first recognize that integrating your whole self and bringing that into everything that you do might be a valuable approach?
Oh, that is such a great question. I really learned it because I was a terrible leader. And I laugh when I say that because I really was a horrible leader. I actually met with one of my former employees recently, and he said to me, because you were so bad at it, I actually learned so much, which made me laugh completely. But I realized I grew up in the Jack Welch School of Management, and it was very much you lead and dictate and others follow. And I came to realize I didn't like that version of me at all. And so it was when I stepped out of leadership and started looking at what I was doing right, what I was doing wrong, that I got the opportunity to recognize that I needed to be authentically me, and that version of me was not authentic. I needed to be passionate and engaged and really caring about the work that I was doing in order for me to be successful in leadership. And so years later, after I kind of pulled this together and started learning the lessons and really having that chance to reflect, I took on a leadership role in a service organization. And if you've led a successful company, that's great, but leading a group of volunteers is a whole different ballgame. And by being able to do that successfully is when I kind of realized, okay, I've now understood the skills that I keep trying to teach people and try to get engaged. And it's really about, if you give 100%, people will give 100% back. But they have to see it and feel it and believe it.
What helps you know when you're giving 100% versus maybe 98 or only 50 or 10?
Oh, gosh, a great question. I really think for me, I know I'm giving 100% when I have to schedule my downtime. When I have to put on my calendar, I need time to just walk away from it. That's when I know I'm completely engaged and passionate about what I'm doing.
Do you have a hard time walking away when you're that engaged?
I do. I do. I hate the phrase work-life balance because I don't think that there's ever a balance. What I love is work-life integration. So right now I'm sitting in my great niece's bedroom because it's the only quiet space in the house where I'm staying at my brother's house right now. and you've got her ocean noises in the background. But I'm I'm all about integrating. How do I make time for everything? So right now I'm in America. I'm on U.S. time, but I'm still getting calls at 11 o'clock at night on for China questions, and so you try to find a way to create balance. I was out on the ocean last night, and when we came in, I had 5 messages that just you deal with right as soon as you come in before you go to bed. So I find integration to be a much better phrase for me than balance. I don't think balance will ever happen, and if you're focused on balance, it's too hard to really give priority when and where priority is needed.
What helps you take enough time on each of the pieces to stay well integrated versus top heavy in one or another?
Oh gosh. So I will always schedule. I live on a schedule. I'm very, very organized in that respect. But I will always schedule the fun things as well and try to work those to the calendar. I find that as long as I have a list and I'm checking things off my list, I can create that flow that works for me. One thing years and years ago, an old manager had given me as a tip was scheduling in work time. So on the old Outlook calendar, he would always have KNT for 2 hour blocks 3 times a week. And when I asked him about that one day, he said it means Kelly needs time. And if I don't put those blocks in, they will get sucked up with meetings and with other appointments and people dropping in instead of me having time to check my emails or work on the project. So it was a really good tip that I've now built in to my world and my schedule.
I use that also. I have an hour and a half every midday to make sure that I get time to feed myself, feed my dog, and take us both for a walk.
Exactly. Exactly. That was another thing that I did to make sure that I prioritized time was getting the dog because they have to go out whether you're working or not. So always finding that time has to happen when you have the dog that has to go out. Completely agree.
When you're working with a leader who's finding challenges in getting the right balance or integration for themselves, how do you help them work through both in understanding what that is for them, which is probably different than it is for anyone else, and then also actually following through, which is often the hardest part?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I was working with a CEO recently who had that very issue, and it had started to affect his health. He had been running one morning and literally stopped short because he couldn't breathe. And what we did was we kind of visually outlined what was going on in his life, and um, we put them all the things, his family, a challenge with his son, launching a new factory, being in China for the first time, all these bubbles. We put them all in bubbles, and then we kind of drew a pot around the bubble because what that was really feeling for him was a pressure cooker, and he felt that he was trying to do so much, and it no longer felt like he was in control. He felt like he was under pressure. And so when we had that visual, he started to look and see, okay, which bubble can I reduce? How can I release some of the pressure? How can I add things that will take some of that away, push some things to other people and delegate effectively? How can I manage the family challenges when they're overseas and I'm not? And how do I balance a little bit better? So with that visual, we were able to come up with some tips and tricks that allowed him to create more balance and take that pressure cooker feeling away.
I like the idea of how you use the terms I imagine he was using of feeling under pressure and turned that into a visualization that reified the pressure he was feeling into a tangible physical form on the whiteboard or whatever you were drawing on, and continuing that metaphor so that it drew that thread of emotion through the entire
Yeah.
conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. It was his word, and when we put it all in the pot, he looked at it, he's that's what it is. And so it's become a bit of a guiding word for us. I'm a big fan of that, even with trainings that I do. I love being able to create a vocabulary that's unique to that individual or that team, that allows them to feel a connection immediately when they hear that word. There's an immediate visual connection or physical, tangible connection. So I always try to create those experiences that allow a vocabulary to show up.
I appreciate that because that's a great example of it would be so easy for you to use the words that make sense for you and to force your clients to flex into your perspective. And instead, you do the opposite. You flex into their perspective, which means that you're spending more energy to translate everything into their terms, which then allows them to not have to spend that energy translating, so they can spend the time taking in, accepting, integrating, and then utilizing.
Exactly. And thank you for acknowledging that. I think it's what a a coach is meant to do. We're there to help them unravel that ball of yarn in their brain and not put our assumptions or belief system or even vocabulary into it. It's really meant to be theirs, that they create, to be able to work with on their own. So it's really hard as a very alpha female. Well, like, I want to step in and be here. This is the solution. Do this. But it's the solution that works for me, not what will work for them. And pretending that I understand all that's going on for them is what made me fail in the past. I don't have all the answers. I have one brain. They have better answers than I do for their challenges. So better to let them solve it.
Indeed. And this is, I won't say super easy, but easier when we're one-on-one with someone. When we're one to more than one, whether that's even just two, let alone 10 or 12 or 50, customizing what we say to the right words for even two other people at the same time can get pretty awkward and uncomfortable. How do you find that balance between customizing what you're saying to each person and knowing that each person needs something completely different from everyone else?
Yeah, it is a challenge. What I try to do is really work with them so they can come up with a language that's theirs. So I recently finished working with a large multinational automotive company, and they were building a new corporate culture. And in this case, language mattered so much. So we spent 3 days together at what we call the farm. Whenever there's a challenge, we go to the farm. And in this particular case, we were 6 people plus me, so 7 people at the farm. And we spent a day and a half really just breaking barriers, getting to a better communication level, understanding how we give and receive communication just at a foundational level, because everybody is different. You know, we have a great tool that we use that describes people as either tigers, dolphins, or owls. And owls tend to be process people. They lead with process, and dolphins tend to be people, and they lead through the how are yous and how are things going for you conversation around the human. And then the tigers, they're performance driven people. What's the result? How do we get to the end? And just even understanding each other's natural style and learning to flex, to be able to adapt to that other person's style such that they feel ready to listen. Because if you're a performance person and you approach somebody who's process driven with, here's the result we need, what's the result? The process person gets flustered because they were ready to tell you step by step what has to happen. And so just understanding the methodology of how people think and how communication works took time. But once they got that and they broke down some of those barriers, when we got to the actual point of creating a company purpose, they were open and willing to challenge every single word that was in that purpose until they all got to a point of loving it. So my consensus method is you either love it, like it, can live with it, or loathe it. And I don't want them to just live with something. I want them all to love it, because if they love it, they're more likely to use it. So what does it take for everyone to get to a point of loving it? When it comes to language, it can be a minor change between a the and an and yet that minor change means so much to an individual because they want to feel that inspiration of what that phrase is supposed to say. So yeah, I find using communication tools, trading tools, just to get people a foundation of natural styles and how a natural style is better supported. It allows the speaker to reach the person who's listening a whole lot better. And that can break down a lot of walls very quickly.
So extrapolating then
It
from
was a long thing.
small groups where and also you've been talking about small groups where we can take the time to understand and customize the way we talk to each person, to larger groups. This shows the importance of doing that work in the smaller groups, of really becoming crisp and extremely conscious about the words we use and why we use them, so that when we use those with larger groups, they have meaning
Yes.
and intention. So that when we're talking to 30, 50, hundreds, thousands of people, we can't customize the words we use to what their preference, each of their preferences. So instead, we can customize the words we use to the context that we're in and what we others have decided are the right words, concepts, metaphors to use in that context, so that everyone may not have as easy of a time. They have to do some translation into their frame of reference. And at least we're all going from the same start, and we understand what that start is and what it looks and feels, sounds, tastes like.
Absolutely. And I think there's value in a united leadership team. And that means it's not just the CEO or the boss saying what he thinks it is, or she thinks it is. It's the team aligning on it together and building it together such that they can stand there as head of finance, head of HR, head of IT, aligned together to say, this is where we agree, and here's why we agree. And this is where we are almost drawing the line in the sand, that you're either on our bus or you're in our way, but this is what we have aligned on. And so it becomes a much more powerful statement to a room of 150 if they feel it's not just one person's voice, but it's their entire leadership's alignment. that they worked through the process and they got there and they believe this to be the way forward.
And when that's the case, I imagine everyone in the company knows what those words are.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not through multiple time a year indoctrinations of this is our mission statement chanted back to me. It's because it's resonating with each of those people, even if it's not a perfect fit. They understand why they're there. They're making a conscious choice about how those words work for them.
Exactly. And that's why I love working with companies when they're challenging and creating their purpose, because what they're really trying to do is define their why. And we're so traditional, especially in China. We're very traditional around vision and mission. And in China, what we often find is visions are so lofty. Like, we want to be the best manufacturer of grapefruits to the universe. And they're huge, these vast statements, but they don't show really what our purpose is. Why do I want to wake up on Monday morning and go to work? And I really believe our culture comes down to two things. And I forgot who said this one, but it's what culture is how we feel on Sunday night when we're getting ready for work on Monday morning. And the second one that I believe culture is culture is how you feel when you're about to raise your hand. And think about that. If you've got a question and you feel involved in that culture and you're willing to stick your hand in the air and know that it's safe and that your voice is welcome, your idea is welcome, that's a huge difference than saying, I'm going to put my hand in the air and this is either going to go one of two ways. I'm either going to be seen as really good, or I'm going to get a talking to later about my attitude, right? So you want to be in the environment of the first, right? So when we talk about this, about purpose, and I love Simon Sinek's words around starting with why, we're really trying to lay a foundation for companies to understand why individuals want to come to work in the morning, why they want to come here. There's so many options out there. It is no longer a seller's market, it's a buyer's market. And if there's so many options out there, why choose us? Why come here? And that's what I work with teams to try to help them understand. Like, why should somebody want to come here? What environment are you providing that they will enjoy coming to work on Monday morning?
What else do you do, Rita, to help people build cultures where they feel safe and empowered to bring their unique talents into everything that they do?
Oh, so many ways. If we start with a foundation a lot of the time on what psychological safety really is, and then we evaluate how people might feel, how but through third party observation, what we're seeing, what we're reading in messages, how we're watching the engagement of a leader with their team. I am fairly direct, and that's one of the things that I think leaders respect about me. I don't dance, and I'm not very afraid of them. I figure they're hiring me for a reason. I'm not in their employee, so I don't have political savviness requirements to protect my career. They're hiring me to tell them what they might not see for themselves, the Johari window. So I look at a lot of these things and I guide. So I worked with the CEO for a number of years, and we had a strong rapport because I just understood him. But I also understood where his weaknesses were. And working with him through his weaknesses, he was a CEO who sat in a top floor of the building. He rarely went down to the canteen. He rarely engaged with people. So they didn't really see him for him. Now, in his defense, he was building an organization. He had huge tasks on him, and he often was sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night. So to break that barrier, to build the human side of him, we would have leadership talks where he would be engaging in a way that people got to see the human side of him. We would organize culturally driven events, a charity run, um, a Chinese New Year event, and bring him in a more humane way so that people could see him as approachable, because he was not finding the time to go sit in the canteen most days, because for him that half hour was an opportunity of a one-on-one with somebody he needed to talk to, or a phone call to headquarters, or something else while he was snarfing some food. So it was really hard for him to dedicate that time to be in the canteen when his brain was spinning. But he encouraged his other leaders, the rest of his board, to be there. Even though he couldn't, he wanted them there. So it was always finding ways to humanize him when he couldn't do it for himself. So I guess the very long answer is, there's direct ways where I can say you're really being a distance leader, and that's not warm and inviting. Or we create ways to create the warmth that's needed. We have to work together to find something that fits on a natural basis, that allows people to come across the way they need to again inspire, drive passion, create an environment of effectiveness, which is the whole goal of businesses, to be more effective than they were the day before.
This brings us back to what we were talking near the beginning of challenges in integrating all the different pieces, parts. And it shows how that fractals down all the way down. It's not just integrating what I do at work, what I do at home, what I do with friends and family versus colleagues. It's integrating all the different, what do I do with my peers, with people above me, with people below me in the hierarchy. And in each of those, there's another fractals of 2 or 3 or more buckets that we're attempting to integrate, and it's fractals all the way down.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it comes down to, how can I be as authentic as I can be in all of this? How do I spin all the plates that need to be spun at the same time without, going crazy in the process? And I think one of the things that works for a coach and works for building that trust and building that phenomenal leader, it comes from really being able to understand that person's authentic self and seeing past some of the layers and helping that authenticity come through in a way that lets them stay comfortable, but also trust others, build better rapport, create a space where they're part of the team, not just looking out over the team. And I think a coach can peel back those layers enough to be able to help them find where that right place sits. And I think that's where a needs analysis and spending a lot of time really understanding that person can be so powerful.
It's something else that you brought up is that I don't hear a lot. Sounds like you emphasize this, is the leader is never working on their own. Even if they're a solopreneur, they're working with other people. And the leader doesn't have to do everything themselves. They can, and not just that, yes, there are lots of things that aren't the leaders really to do that they could and maybe should be delegating out to other people. There's also, like in the example you gave, where in the cases where the CEO wasn't able to go down to the canteen to show that human side of himself, he still asked his peers to go down and instead and made sure that at every event there is at least someone from the executive suite was in that room with people, showing that the execs were real people and
Exactly.
enjoyed and hated food just like everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it sounds so silly, but that was one of the lessons I had to learn when I was first living in China and I was here with the auto industry. I hated the canteen food. So I would go out every day. And what that meant was I wasn't engaging with my team. I wasn't embracing the the experience. I was separating myself from it. Now, in my mind, it was selfishly, I didn't like the food. I'm going out for my regular lunch. And the other thing was they had to spend 8 hours a day speaking English to me. Let them enjoy lunchtime where they could just be in Chinese and be comfortable. And that was my vision of why I was doing what I was doing. But what they were receiving was something totally different. She thinks she's better than us. She's flaunting her money. She's not part of the team, like 100 other things than what I intended. And so it goes back to that communication. Communication is less about what we, the giver, want, and it's more about what the receiver receives. And it took me a long time to realize that it's so important that we be receiver focused, listener focused in our communication and not self-driven. It has to be driven by the other person and what message we really want them to hear. How do we best give them that message? And so that's where I guess my hindsight and my ability to have seen that after the fact through a third party lens gives me that opportunity to help others when they might not see it for themselves because they're not looking at it from the perspective of the receiver. And so whether that's with a group of one or a group of 10, when I work with teams, when we find that bottleneck and help them to get out of their own way, it's really oftentimes about how they're communicating and how the receiver is hearing them rather than what they're actually trying to say.
This again comes back to the integration conundrum on, in this case, how do I integrate what's best for me? I don't like that food. It's not healthy. It's not what I need to take care of myself against this is a way to spend time with the team outside of the workplace structure. And the second thing that this is highlighting for me is how easy it is to inflict help when you meet to offer. Your intent was to everything to help them. And it wasn't what they actually wanted. And the only way to ever know this really is to ask.
Exactly.
Because
yeah,
at least I have not yet met anyone that could read minds with any sort of accuracy.
Very true. Very true.
So,
but we don't think about the ask. So often we're never in that place where we're thinking about how's the other person receiving this? What might they think differently from what I think? And that's where again some of those coaching tools and self-reflection tools can come in. But I often talk with individuals when we're going through coaching around the concept of reacting versus responding. And we're so quick to react, which basically means there's an action and we immediately have a reaction versus a response where there's a pause. We never really prioritize the pause, but the pause is where everything is. That action happens. We take a moment. We think about, okay, How could I respond? If I respond this way, what happens? If I respond that way, what happens? And then come up with our response. It's like, I don't know if you remember, you're roughly my age, I'm guessing. I don't know if you remember those choose your own adventure books from when we were kids.
Oh,
They,
yes.
they were great because if you chose this and this next step, this was the adventure. And if you chose that next step, there was a totally different one. And I would often go back and reread them, choosing different paths each time. But that's how leadership gets strong, is when we take that pause and think, if I do this, here's the potential path of actions. If I do that, here's a potential path. And we don't often do that. We do it for the what. We don't often do it for the how, for the engagement part. And that's what we try to build into people.
That's really important. And also important is that as we're finding the right integration at each point in time, the answer doesn't always have to be doing what works best for the other person. Sometimes it can be, and even has to be, what works best for us.
Yeah.
So you could have chosen to eat in the canteen some days and not other days, so you could find a balance.
Exactly.
And these are great opportunities to open up, as we've been talking about, conversation, to ask, how are you feeling about me not eating with you? Is that something you would like? And then also to have a conversation to explain why you haven't been eating with them, so they understand more about you. So that shows, again, helps them understand the human side of you more. And then to have a conversation about how should we best balance what you want, which is me eating with you all the time, maybe none of the time, and what I want, which is to have a social conversation with you outside of the business context for a window during the day, and also to nourish myself, to sample the food here, which is different from everything I'm used to. And that's part of what I'm here to do, is to
Yeah.
enjoy all of this adventure, and also to eat food that's going to nourish me, which isn't necessarily what's here.
And that emotional intelligence is what I was lacking 15 years ago. And what it took me a long time to really understand and take a step back and be willing to reflect on. And you're 1000% right, Michael. All of those options exist if you take the pause. And I wasn't prepared to back then. And I see it so often with teams, with leaders, because they feel that the human side is not as important as getting what needs to be done. And they feel that they'll work on the priorities later. And they don't recognize that if they get the priorities right and they get the relationships right, the rest of it comes so much easier. We just have to turn it upside down. But so often we put people last instead of putting the people side first.
So that is a lovely segue into my next question, which is, so as we're creating these cultures where people feel safe and empowered to bring their whole selves into everything that they do, why does the business care? What's the business get out of these cultures?
And that is so funny, because that was my always when I was working in corporate, it was always about what, never about how. But the business cares about the how, and business needs to care about the how, simply because happy employees do better work. It's fundamental. It's been studied. It's been tested. It's been proven. Happy employees give you their best. Safe employees give you their weird idea, and that weird idea is given a place to grow. If we don't feel safe, if we don't feel trusted, if we don't feel like our weird humanity matters, then we're not going to give you our weird idea. We're going to hold back. We're going to give you the minimum needed to meet the objective, not the best of of us. And that's where companies need to work better at the human side. And it's not just on the recruiting front, it's throughout a person's career. They need to feel trusted, validated. They need to feel important and that their work matters. Um, when I left my corporate role, I left for a variety of reasons, but one of the biggest ones was when I asked what my career path was after 3 years in China. One of the answers that I was given was, well, you're number 47 in line for a promotion. Wow, 47. And the role that I would be promoted into only had 15 spots. That level only had 15 spots. So that meant I had to wait out a minimum of 3 cycles in order to potentially be promoted. What does that do to your motivation? What does that do to somebody's desire to show up on Monday morning? Am I going to give you my best? Am I going to handle the day-to-day and more? I'm going to give you my 9 to 5. I'm not going to give you all that matters. And that was one of the reasons that I chose to leave, because I knew what that would do to me. First of all, career suicide, because I would not be happy and I would not give the best of me. So career suicide. But I also felt I would have been so unhappy that if I've got to be somewhere 9 hours, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, gosh, I want to be enjoying it. That's different for every person. For some people, they're thrilled with this financial security. They love the brand. They love the team around them. It varies by individual. And that's where we have to really understand our own self-motivation. But we have to understand that people are not just going to be happy hamsters just running in the wheel constantly. We have to be able to develop and grow them and care for them. And if a company doesn't do that, trust me, there's another one down the street that will. And that's where companies have to recognize the investment they're placing in a person is crazy. Just to find them, interview them, offer them, hire them, move them sometimes, bring them on board, all of those costs get lost the second that person leaves the company because they don't feel valued or feel welcome. All of those costs go away and we're back up to a learning curve. We take away all of the lessons that person gained, all of their insight and their knowledge. They're not going to transfer that. They're going to, if you're lucky, leave you a list of contacts for the next person to take over. That's about it. They're not going to give you what they would give you if they genuinely cared. And so keeping an employee engaged, it doesn't always mean promotion or bonuses or salary increases. It means letting them feel valued. And it doesn't take a lot. It takes a leader who walks around and checks in on people on a regular basis, who knows the employees' names, who genuinely cares, does a skip level meeting every quarter with a group of the next level or 2 levels down people. It takes more than just a survey once a year. It really takes the human. And when you do that, companies that do that thrive. Companies that don't do that are struggling.
Yeah, they are. And this, again, demonstrates the value of knowing your people. For some people, knowing they were 47th, I think it was,
Yep.
in line, and it would be at least 3 promotion cycles till they even had a chance, that would be great. Except, okay, great. I have 3 cycles before I really have to be performing at a level that makes me reasonable to promote. That's so much nicer than if I have to do that a month from now.
Exactly. But for others, that's
And
not
for
the
you, it
case.
was the opposite. And I'd hazard a guess that if they hadn't told you that and you went a cycle, another cycle, maybe another cycle without being promoted, you would have been progressively unhappy, and you and the company would have been way worse for way longer than when you just found this out because they were transparent about it. And so you could make the choice for yourself and say, okay, this isn't going to work. It's time to do something else.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm very grateful that I was given that knowledge because it let me make an informed decision. Yeah. Yeah. And I think um there's leadership styles and approaches that can really change a person. So I grew up under Alan Mullally's leadership, and Alan was one of the greats. And one thing that he always said was, look, it's going to be horrible for the next 6 weeks when we were going through massive layoffs. He said, it's going to be horrible for the next 6 weeks, and we're going to lose members of our family. And it's going to be hard on every single one of us. But I promise you, after 6 weeks, when it's over, it's done. And he was right, and it was over. Well, years later, and leadership later, there's been changes at that same company, and people are still being laid off, and they're not sure. And the leadership says, oh, it's over, but then a month later it's back. And there's so much uncertainty around that it makes for a tough time for the employees. How do I feel? Do I put my head down and just stay under the radar? Do I try to do more and hope that it works so that I can protect myself? But if it doesn't work, is my head on the chopping block? Do I stay in my job and hope that my job is safe? Or do I take a new one and risk that one not being safe? It's such a horrible feeling for the individuals. And when I talk to different people in the company still, the one thing they tell me is it's not the same culture. The culture is bad. The culture is different. And that's heartbreaking when you came from a really strong, positive culture. We were at the bottom of the barrel, like worst in the league, and became World Series champions in 3 years because we had a leader that rallied the team and brought us forward. And now they're in this totally different leadership role. The team, the culture isn't feeling like a team, and they're not feeling like they belong together. And it's heartbreaking when you know how good it could be. And so 1000% companies need to focus on the human. They need to be able to recognize one consistent messaging, one consistent approach, trusting that they've got the right process and priorities, and that they have the right people. And if they don't trust they have the right people, you could have the best process and the best strategy in the world. I think that was Drucker. It doesn't matter if you don't have the people behind you, the culture.
100%. And that story reader really emphasizes the importance of culture and how fast the culture can change in both directions. 3 years, you went from bottom of the class to valedictorian. That's really fast to move through any industry from the bottom to the top. And now with just a small change in culture, it's going back to the bottom.
Yeah, it really can have such an impact. Human interaction can really change people. They always say people join a company and leave a boss. And there's some truth to that, but there's more truth than they join a company and leave a culture.
Yes. So, as a leader, how do I recognize where my culture is, and especially which direction is it headed?
So many great ways to do this. I think the first way you'll know where your culture is how your people show up. And what I mean by that is, are they showing up energized, or are they just showing up? Are they coming in not necessarily early, because I don't believe in FaceTime, but are they coming in highly engaged, or are they coming in reactive, responsive rather than proactive? Are they coming in with ideas? Are they knocking on your door and saying, hey, I was thinking about this. How about that? Or are they just following direction? Those quick looks will give you an indication of the culture that you have.
And tracking that then can be however we want to track it. It doesn't have to be anything formal or official or fancy metrics. It can simply be, how many smiles did I see today? How much laughter? As you said, how many people have knocked on my door with ideas or questions?
Yeah. Team meetings are a great one for understanding how people are engaged. When I'm at a team meeting where the leader does the least amount of talking, that's a great team meeting, right? If the leader is doing all the talking and the people are nodding their head, maybe taking a note or two, staring at their phone, it's not a strong team. A team that feels trusted, that feels engaged, is going to be engaged. They're going to be leading some of the activity in the team meetings, and it will be a different vibe than what you'll find if they are unengaged and it's a leader driven meeting. The leader should be the one sitting back not talking rather than the other way around.
And talking to encourage other people to talk.
Yes, yes, yes. Whenever I'm working with a team and a leader will be in the room, whether it's a training or a workshop or just a strategy session, I will always tap the leader in advance and say, you don't speak until the others speak. And again, particularly in China, where the authority differential is quite high, the hierarchy is quite a distance, power distance. I always have to remind a leader that once they speak, their team will not, because they'll feel, okay, well, he's voiced his opinion or she's voiced her opinion, so there's no validity in my voicing mine. So we'll always say, you have to speak last. And you're not creating a solution, you're part of the team creating a solution. It's really a challenge. I was working with a Chinese business owner recently and her leadership team, and she struggles so much to not let the team do their work and then step in and change it. And that's absolutely not what they want. They want her engaged and her voice and her ideas as the leader, but they don't want her stepping in from a hierarchical standpoint. They want her part of the team. And so the first 2 days of our workshop, did a 4-day workshop with her team. The first day and a half, I watched this unfold. She would walk out of the room when there was an activity and then come back in to observe and change, which drove me mental. And so we finally said, you know what? I want you to be part of this, but I want you to be silent until some people have worked through it. And then I want you to engage with them. What made this be what you said? How is this working? How do we make this successful? Ask them questions and be curious. And what changed in that room was an energy shift because the team felt she was one of them. She was working with them to create an idea rather than overseeing it, or negating their thought process. And what happened was on day 3 and day 4, she became an actual participant. And at the end of the 3rd day, they sat in a semicircle around the room and shared with her some of their challenges, some of their observations, which is so powerful, especially in this culture. So utterly powerful for this team to feel so psychologically safe that they could tell their Chinese boss who owns the company that they didn't appreciate certain aspects of her leadership style and asked her if she would change. Huge moment, huge moment. But that's where a leader who is willing to try something different will find themselves creating a new culture.
You helped her move Rita from separated observation to engaged curiosity. And this is perhaps the most powerful shift in any context I know.
It's huge. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, it was a huge moment. And I was looking at my translation team going, did we just do that? It was utterly amazing to see, but necessary. And again, I think that comes back to what I was saying earlier, where if I have to be direct, I will, because oftentimes we just don't see that mirror. I never saw the mirror until somebody pointed it out to me. I I wish I had seen the mirror sooner. My career might have been totally different, but I'm grateful that somebody finally said something to me. And I know with the leaders that I work with, part of why they're trusting me is because they know that I will do anything possible to help them do their job better and get out of their way. And that was one of the things that she needed to have mirrored to her. If you walk out of the room every time there's an activity, what message are you sending your team? How do they feel about this? And it was a game changer for them.
Again, like with you and eating in a canteen or not, she was meaning to offer help, and instead she was inflicting it.
100%. She thought she was doing something in a way that was letting the team do their thing, giving them space, but in reality, that wasn't what they needed. And so that they were willing to share what they needed from her, what role they needed her to play, how they wanted her to lead was really wonderful. That they kind of got around to a point where they said, okay, if we could define your role as CEO, here's the things we think you should be doing. That was really powerful. And she's working on it. It's a work in progress. In fact, I owe her a call today, because it is a constant challenge. We don't change overnight. Our habits don't change overnight. But when we know we know how good it feels. It literally feels good. You feel a lightness in your shoulders. You feel that ball of knots in your stomach goes away. You feel you can sleep better when you're doing it right. There is an actual physical transformation that takes place when it's being done right. We just have to be tuned into it. That pause. That pause is what's key.
How do you help people find their way through all the change, uncertainty, and overwhelm that seems to fill every day these days?
Such a challenging question. I guess when it comes to the uncertainty, the thing that I would say the most is you have to be able to maintain your authenticity be aware of where your traps are. So I don't do well with last minute changes or um, being late. I'm always late, but I don't do well with being late when it's not in my control. And so things like traffic or other people's schedules drive me crazy when I'm on a my list. And so we have to be aware of our triggers. And I think once we're aware of our triggers, we can build around them. So um case in point, our situation today, I knew I was going to be triggered if traffic could cause me to be late and I was stuck in a parking lot trying to do this. And what if the internet didn't work? And what if this happened? And so to get ahead of the trigger, how do I mitigate the trigger? What can I do differently? And when it comes to the VUCA world that we're living in, we can't predict everything, but we can understand what our triggers are and be able to find solutions to our triggers. So if I know there's so much uncertainty, or if I know there's volatility in the market, when it comes to how a leader can continue to lead, how can they protect their team and create trust in their team such that that volatility in the market does not create volatility and trust? And so what do they have to do to be authentic, to be aware of the triggers, to be open and honest and let people know we might not have a solution right now, but we are going to work towards it. And here's what our plans are. The more information people have, the better they're comfortable and capable of responding, the better trust you're going to get with them. So I'm a big fan of when you're dealing with change, when you're dealing with uncertainty, the more communication you have, the more opportunities you have to create dialogue, the better. I have a client who recently did an employee satisfaction survey. They do it every 3 years, but in the course of the past 3 years, they've gone through a massive transformation. Again, CFO, he thought everything is going great. Our numbers are fabulous. Products flying off the shelves. Literally one of the best transformations I've ever heard of in terms of actual transformation of the company from unprofitable to highly profitable. And he and I have been talking about a month ago when he was telling me about this, and he was so thrilled about how things have worked out over the past couple of years. And then he got his employee satisfaction numbers back, and the entire column of HR numbers was negative. From survey to survey, everything dropped, and not dropped by a point or two, dropped by double digits. He didn't wait. Within a couple of hours of receiving this information, he called. He called his HR person. He called me. He said, okay, we have to solve this. We can't wait on such a thing. We have to talk to the team today. So immediately, plan in place, and we have a workshop coming up in 2 weeks to talk to the team, to have focus groups and really understand what the layers are behind this. It was something that the environment is volatile. He couldn't allow his team to go volatile. He couldn't allow something so negative to impact his team on the go forward when there's so much opportunity for them. That type of responsiveness to the humanity of the team, the culture, is what will lead his team to continue to be successful. Not the financial turnaround, the marketing turnaround, but the team turnaround is what's killer. And so he saw that and he realized, okay, we've done all the what, and the what's been great, but somewhere along the line, we've missed the how. We've got to fix the how. Because in his mind, how could anybody be upset? Everything's great. But in the employee's mind, it's not. So it's back to what you've been saying this whole time. It's the perception of the other people and asking them. He wants to right away start to ask, okay, what do we do? How is this impacting you? How do you want it to impact you? And jump right in with an outside third party to help understand it more.
I applaud that CFO for recognizing the importance of the impact on the people this transformation was happening.
Yeah, absolutely.
Many people, communication is key. And it doesn't have to mean that we say everything about everything. Some things we have good reasons for not saying, regulatory, legal, and otherwise. And we can still be open about, yep, there are things going on I can't talk about. Because if I do, I get hauled off to jail for SEC violations or whatever it
Exactly.
is. I like being here, working with you people and helping.
Exactly. But the more we can share, at least the thought process, at least the confidence we have, the more we can garner trust. And that's what so often companies don't do well. And, I had a leader said, I can't manage a secret. If you don't tell me what's going on, I can't help. But I also can't hide things from you and expect you to do stuff without you understanding why. Which comes back to starting with why. Why do we need to do this? Why does it matter? Why do the humans matter? It's all in the why.
And this brings us back to, we talked at the beginning of how do we integrate everyone's needs when they're all different. Because for some people, having the CFO say, our numbers are headed into the toilet. I'm not sure how we're going to turn this around. They would be so grateful. Because, thank you. I thought things were off. I didn't know what was going on. And now I appreciate that transparency. And for other people, there's way too much information. What they want to know is things are a little bumpy right now. We're working on a plan. I have confidence we'll get back to everything smooth again. And integrating those two ends of the spectrum and everything in between is one of the things that makes leadership hard. And that sets great leaders apart from uncommon leaders.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It is what's going to be the part that separates them. But it doesn't start in the time of a crisis. It starts before the crisis. It starts for the minute they start employment. We call it a leadership shadow. And basically, how we present and how people perceive us when we're in the room and how they perceive us when we walk out of the room is what we want to have consistent, right? We don't want people to be yesing us in the room and then as soon as we walk out, go, God, what a moron she is, right? We don't want to hear that. We want people to be inspired by us on a regular basis. And that shadow that we're leaving behind it comes from everything we do, which is why I harp on authenticity, because it's really hard to be inauthentic 24/7. And so if we're going to be our authentic self, then you have to be that all the time. My clients know I never wear suits. I started out my career wearing suits. I had to wear suits in university. I hate suits. You will never find me in a suit. I'll dress business casual. Most of the time I dress for the work that I'm going to be doing, which is pretty physical. I tend to be very active in the room. So I dress for the activity. I'm always in pants and comfortable shoes, but I'm not going to put on a suit and pantyhose for anybody these days. but that's my authentic self, right? If I show up in a suit, you're never going to get the version of me that's me, because I'm going to be uncomfortable and miserable and this feels awkward and this is tight and can I sit? I don't want to do it. And so if that's what matters, I'm not your person. but we know that up front. And so it sounds so silly, but it's just what it is. But that ability to be authentic, that ability to be direct and true and open and honest is what people want out of a leader. They want that you. They don't want to know that you're a totally different person outside. Yeah, a billion years ago when I was in high school, we had a doctor. One of our teachers was a doctor, a PhD in history, I think, and he wore a suit in the office at school because we all wore uniforms, and he would show up on a motorcycle. He was a motorcycle rider. Now you would say at a good Catholic prep school, this man shows up on a motorcycle in the 1990s. Unheard of. But he did, because that was his authentic self. And he didn't hide the fact that he was a Harley Davidson enthusiast. He didn't wear his chaps in the classroom, but he didn't hide himself. And so that level of authenticity allowed people to like him more, because he wasn't keeping it a secret from his people. It sounds crazy, but that's where, if you start early, from the minute you walk in, to being you, to giving people that version of you that is always you, they'll trust you more. And then when the crisis happens, they're already behind you. They're not going to leave you, because they've already known who you are.
Yes. I always say, whoever you are, the world is clamoring to have you in their lives.
I agree. I love that.
For people who would like to get in touch with you, Rita, and have a conversation, what is the best way for them to do that?
Oh, that is a great question. The best way is to not look at my website, because it hasn't been updated in about 6 years. It's literally there just to prove that I do exist and that I'm real. And it actually has a really funny picture of me on a jet ski on it, because, again, authenticity. But the easiest way for people to reach me is it's either LinkedIn or email, probably are the two best. I mean, they can follow me on Facebook, but nobody wants to do that. It's not really a professional Facebook page. I tend to use LinkedIn and email the easiest ways. I'm not social media driven at all. I should be, but I'm terrible about that.
I would say you shouldn't be if it's not your wife.
It's
Some
not authentic for me. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, so don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't waste your time.
No. 100% of my work has always come from word of mouth and through engagements and opportunities for people to talk, and I love talking. As you've heard today, you've done none of it, and I've done a ton of it. So I definitely welcome anything that leads to a conversation.
Great. I'll have those links in the show notes. What would you like to leave our audience today with, Rita?
Oh gosh, so much. Understand who you really are, and be true to you. Authenticity is probably the key word, I would say, of the day. And I would say the other thing is, really think about your leadership style. There's no right or wrong. Think about how it fits. If your leadership style is a fit to what's to your current company and your team's success, great. If it's not fitting, what are some of the things that you could do? You could ask or question or change to make it a better fit. And I go back to, you'll feel it. You will really feel it if something needs a tweak. You'll feel better. It's that chiropractic method we mentioned at the beginning. It's all about a small adjustment to make a massive impact. And that's where I really believe the opportunity can lie. If you can think about what small adjustment can you make that will have a big impact, you will feel the difference in yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for a wonderful conversation today.
I'm so happy to be here, Michael. You make it so easy to talk. Thank you for great questions and engaging dialogue.
You're welcome. I'm glad you've enjoyed yourself.
100%.
Audience, thank you for joining us today. Rita and I would love to know, what small shift are you making to make your life, work, whatever is aggravating you, fit a little better today? Thanks, and have a great day.